Delivery delays, missed reviews, work duplicated across different teams. If you work in an office, you know these frustrations intimately. When projects stall or get lost between departments, it is easy to blame individual productivity. But the real issue is almost always a broken, invisible system. The work fails because the sequence of tasks is hidden in people's heads. To fix this, you have to expose the sequence. That is what a process map does. It is a visual layout of exactly how work travels from the beginning of a project to the end. Before you draw a single line, you have to adopt the right mindset. You must map what is actually happening on the ground today, complete with the messy workarounds, rather than the ideal scenario written in an outdated company manual. You do not need expensive software to start. A simple piece of paper, even a whiteboard, or a digital canvas suffices. Translating these invisible habits into a standardized visual format provides a baseline. It turns anecdotal complaints into a documented flow analyzed for specific points of failure. Step 1 is setting your boundaries. You need to define the exact trigger that starts the work and the final output that ends it. Establishing a strict scope is critical. If you do not draw a firm box around a single workflow, you will end up trying to map the entire company's operations, which leads to immediate burnout. Step 2, identify the actors. Look at everyone involved in the process, individual employees, departments, or software systems. We organize these actors into horizontal swim lanes, creating a grid that instantly solves the confusion of who is responsible for what. A basic linear flowchart will show you the sequence of tasks. A swim lane map takes it a step further by adding the dimension of human accountability. Setting strict boundaries, combined with dedicated lanes, prevents scope creep and forces clear ownership before you map a single task. Now we can start filling in the grid. To do this, we use a universal visual language so that anyone looking at the map interprets the steps exactly the same way. Start with the oval, marking the absolute beginning and final endpoint of the map. Next, the rectangle represents a specific action taken by an actor. Finally, the diamond is a decision point, splitting the workflow into yes or no paths. This chart shows advanced task markers from the Business Process Model Standard. Enterprise architects use these complex symbols to map system rules, but you do not need them. The basic shapes, ovals, rectangles, diamonds, and arrows, are enough to diagnose most operational problems. Sticking to these standard shapes removes ambiguity. It allows any member of your team to read the workflow clearly, like an engineering blueprint. For step 4, we place the sequential tasks into their corresponding swim lanes. This builds your as-is map, a picture of how the work actually functions today. To gather accurate data, you must interview the frontline workers. They know exactly where the undocumented steps and daily workarounds are hiding. As you connect shapes, pay close attention to lines crossing lanes. These department handoff points are where information gets dropped. Also map the errors. If a check fails at a diamond, draw a backward arrow to show the rework. Once the as-is map is drawn, step 5 is to scan for systemic waste. Look for bottlenecks. Visually, these appear as dense clusters crammed into a single lane, or excessive arrows bouncing back and forth across boundaries. The as-is map provides a structural diagnosis. It isolates systemic flaws by documenting the current reality, providing the evidence required for a redesign. A chaotic, frustrating set of daily habits is now a clean schematic document. The invisible work is finally fixed in place on a grid. With the entire process laid out on the table, teams have a shared visual consensus. The argument over how things are currently done is over, because the proof is right there in the map. From here, you move to the optimization phase by designing a to-be map. This is where you actively delete those congested red zones, consolidate tasks, and remove unnecessary handoffs. Pick the most painful, delayed workflow your team deals with every week. Open a blank canvas, define your start point, and draw your first oval. Mapping the process shifts your team's energy away from complaining about symptoms and gives them the blueprint to engineer a permanent solution.